Oh, hello, space junkies. I didn't see you there. You gotta watch yourself sneaking up on me like that. These are dangerous and dark times. And here to help me in these dangerous and dark times to avoid being too emo is my co host of the Star Wars show here on the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Derek Marsh. Derek, how's it going?
It is going great. We're actually recording on a Thursday here, simply just due to because of schedules. Nathan's going to be unavailable this upcoming weekend, but also the fact that we're just super excited because Andor is finally here. We got 3 episodes to cover, and I can't wait till we get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the gooey one, our very own Dave Filcloni, Mr. Miracle, man of 1,000 nicknames, or in this atmosphere, perhaps those are all aliases. It's Mr. Nathan Miracle. Nathan, are they nicknames or aliases?
They be nicknames, and I'm only 3 days late for Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Yes, and I, of course, am your agreeable host, Scotticus Max, and you are listening to us discuss a show that I feel like is going to be rife with pirates, space pirates to be precise. Star Wars Andor, of course. Unless you've been living under a rock or you maybe don't subscribe to Disney Plus, you know that Star Wars fans have been counting down the days, minutes, seconds even, till we reach the premiere of Star Wars Andor, where Tony Gilroy gets to dive back in to explore one of the best characters to come out of one of the best Star Wars movies ever, and that, of course, is Star Wars Rogue One, with this deep dive into the origins of one Cassian Andor, or if you ask Luthen, Cassian Andor.
Well, and not just a side story or a prequel for Andor. I mean, just a lot of the rebellion characters. I mean, it's almost probably going to be a Mon Mothma, prequel.
Hmm. Yep.
Find out origin story about her more or less. Some of these other characters that we might get, more later on. I mean, let's be honest. It's not like quote unquote all the Jedi were dead in the original trilogy, and miraculously
Right.
we've had a gazillion Jedi show up after. So so there's no telling what other characters we'll see here that we're getting origin stories for. I feel like this one of these characters that's playing the Prima corporate security guards is going to be a character that we just don't know about yet.
That would be cool. I have enjoyed the security guards. Of course, we're going to dive into all three of the episodes that were released on a very special 21st day of September, if I may quote Earth, Wind, and
It
Fire.
was our anniversary to me and my wife, so
Oh, congratulations! And what a great present to you from Disney Plus, right? Three new
yes.
episodes of Star Wars show. But let's just go ahead and go around the horn here, and we'll talk about our initial reactions overall to the show, and we'll do specific individual episode reactions later. Oh, I'm getting an incoming transmission on a Secret Rebellion frequency. What the? This looks like it's upside down. This doesn't make any sense. Hang on. Oh my gosh, it is upside down. It's the Lethal Mullet, Adam O'Brien, joining us from the land of Oz. Adam, how's it going?
Well, there's no yellow brick roads here, but it's doing well. G'day, fellas. How you going?
We are great, and we are so happy to have you joining us in the Drunken Gungan. You have joined us just in time for us to talk about our initial reactions to Andor. Of course, later in this episode, we will go over each of the 3 episodes. I know you've just been absorbing every detail, but Adam, what do you think about the show overall so far?
Well, first of all, we got it a little bit earlier than you guys. We got it, God, what was it? Probably about 6 hours earlier than you guys, because we are in the future here in Australia. But
Yes.
it is the first Star Wars show which really isn't just for Star Wars fans. This is something that could be in a Blade Runner universe or some other style of science fiction. It, like Solo, I think treads new ground, which Star Wars hasn't really done in this way, but still has more ties to the original trilogy in the way it's paced. It gives itself time, and I'm sure you guys will agree. It's just a nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah. I also felt like it had DNA from lots of famous science fiction. Like you said, especially that first episode, Casa, made me feel like was this a Blade Runner series that I didn't know was coming? There were very many moments just like the original Blade Runner film, especially at the beginning of that episode when he
The
was bopping around.
holograms, the
Yep,
lights, everything,
that's right.
the
Yeah.
rain,
Even a bit
everything.
of THX.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. But then also overall, I've gotten kind of a James Bond feel to it. You know, Cassian's an orphan. He's like made for covert work. He's really good at being unnoticed until those few unlucky moments where he does get noticed when he doesn't want to be. And there's a few hints that he's a bit of a ladies' man. You know, Bix is irritated with him every so often, and then one of his friends says, "Did you get into a fight with another jealous husband?" You know, so yeah, so that's good. So that's my initial take. Nathan, what are your initial thoughts about the show?
We talk quite a bit on this podcast about how we'd love to see more Star Wars that doesn't have lightsabers. And this is it. So this is pretty much exactly what we've been asking for. It's still Star Wars. It still has a lot of the hallmarks of Star Wars, a lot of the things that we'll recognize, but it's not the story of Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker and the Skywalker saga. It still ties in, but it's not directly that story, and I love that about this show. So I greatly enjoyed it. The thing I enjoyed most was the corporation and seeing how they handled things, because we see the Empire often as this big evil. They've got Death Stars, they blow up planets, but the real evil of the Empire is that middle management, that giving flunkies just enough power to keep them dedicated to your side and keeping everybody else in line. So I thought it was great to see that level of the Empire. That was probably my favorite thing.
Yeah, cool. All right, Derek, initial thoughts of the series as a whole.
So I know that there's quite many people out there that have been up and down with Star Wars since Disney's taken over. And I keep saying this. I am okay with having some Star Wars produced by Disney that is not okay, or something that I don't like, if we're going to continue to get stuff like this, because this is perfect for me. This is exactly what you guys said, what I wanted. I wanted something else. It almost feels like this is exactly what Mando started off with before we got really deep down into it. And then we got Luke and everything else and Ahsoka and everything. So it's just super excited. I've loved Diego Luna. I've loved the Cassian Andor character since we got Rogue One. Like everybody says, like, obviously I thought Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie produced by Disney yet. And I do feel great that it stuck to canon and that all the characters had to die. But when they announced this, I was super stoked. Some people were like, "Oh, what do I care about a character that died?" Well, same thing that we happened with Darth Vader. We know Darth Vader dies, but who didn't want prequels 1, 2, and 3, right? So the fact that we still got Gilroy doing the writing for this, which is great, right? So there's still that continuation in that fluid and again, it's going to be that non-force user, and I'm just so excited. The cast so far has been spot on. It's grungy. It's what I felt Book of Boba should have been, where it wasn't as colorful. Like, I get some of the homage that we talked about paying to like American Graffiti and stuff, but some of it just took me out too much. But this is just putting you right back into that Star Wars universe where it's just it's other, unless if you're a millionaire that's living in Kanto or you're part of the Empire, you live a tough life. You got to go to work every day, and you're working from sun up to sundown, right? And everybody's got a job to do, and that's what you do, just to make ends meet and survive. So I love it.
Yeah, totally. So Adam, you and I both talked about how this series felt almost un-Star Warsy at certain points. Do you think there was enough Star Wars DNA to connect it to the rest of the universe?
I think there is. Now, one of the things I probably haven't talked about yet, and it'll come out in the next Fantha from Down Under episode, I talked about the grunginess, as you guys have mentioned. This is really, it's the grungy part of Star Wars, and it's got that sort of Blade Runner feel, which I will say this: you're after a Blade Runner TV show, you're getting one. It's called 2099, and it's coming soon. Anyway, enough of that sidetrack. But what we're looking at here is a time. Yeah, it's like less even like Kenobi had some grungy parts too, but we know what we're heading in with those guys too. What's interesting is this is heading into something that I really enjoyed and something that was it 20. I can't remember. It was 2012 or 2013 that came out, but Edge of the Empire came out with Fantasy Flight Games, and it's a game I still continue to play to this day. And it's this sort of area, and it goes back to the 1980s and 90s with, of course, West End D6 Star Wars, which was exactly like this. And if you see Luthen's Corellian ship at the end of was it the third episode when he comes in? That is straight out of the West End Games Corellian supplements. It's got those ships, those those great freighters, the YT series and on, and they're all the different variants that they've got. That's what really has pulled me into this, is because when we play those games, you couldn't play Jedi. You weren't given that option. If you're a Jedi, you were hunted down just like they are obviously in Kenobi. So it's great to see heroes like, of course, Casian Andor. And really, this is, if anything, a non-Nolanized Casian Andor begins, and we're seeing it in such a great way. And I love the pace. The pace is that it's taking its time. Not everything has to be Marvel pace or even some of the other Star Wars now that are quite fast. This is a great pace. You're learning the story as you go, just like George did in the first movies. The pace is you're learning the story on the run in media res, which is something that Frank Herbert does with Dune. His Dune tangent, you now have Baron Vladimir Harkonnen in Star Wars, along with, of course, Duke Leto Atreides also in. And they're both in Marvel now too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I for a couple of seconds there, when Stellan Skarsgård showed up as Luthen, I thought, "Oh, is this a big swerve? Is he an Imperial spy and he was gonna double cross Cassian? How could you trust Baron Harkonnen?" But then I had to remind myself, he's an actor. He's acting. So anyway, Nathan, you talked about how this was a Star Wars show that was unlike other Star Wars shows. We're so far not much in the way of mythology, no force happening, etc. Do you think we're going to stay that way? Is your initial impression going to remain, or is it, is Vader coming down the hallway?
I'm not saying that we're not ever going to see Vader in this. I could see him being a cameo appearance, but I don't think that we're going to go up against him. Quite frankly, Vader could mop the floor with Cassian.
Well, yeah, and of course, Rogue One is the movie where we all famously see Vader mopping the floor, or ceiling, as the case may be, with various,
both at the same time. Yeah, no. So if we see Vader, I think it's going to be more of he's getting onto that ship over there, and oh my gosh, who is that? Let's go the other way. So I don't think we're going to see him in action. And honestly, I'd prefer not to see Vader at all.
Yeah,
we have enough Vader content.
Yeah, Vader
seems to show up everywhere. He can't be everywhere all at once. That's a whole different movie.
Yes, he at this point he's almost stunt casting.
Yes, yeah. So I'd prefer not to see him. I prefer not to see any Jedi or honestly anything related to the Force. Now that doesn't mean that I think we're not going to see anything related to the Force. I actually do have a theory related to something that we'll talk about a little bit later as to how we might see something that actually ties into Grogu.
Whoa.
But overall, I think it's going to be very Force light.
Okay. All right. Great. Derek, your response about initial impressions was so good, I couldn't come up with a good follow-up question. So anything else you want to add to your initial...
Well, just to kind of continue where Nathan left off, right? I agree. I don't think I want to see a Force user in this right now. Again, it's not to say I don't think we wouldn't possibly get Palp, because I would think to him addressing the Senate or something like that, it makes sense to me, right? I mean, that is perfectly fine because he's not going to be going out and shooting Force lightning at people, right? So I love how both of you guys did that. And obviously, Vader, it wouldn't make sense right now. You might get a name drop or something like that, or you might get a hologram, something like that, but, with a message or something like that. But again, this might be something where we get a Grand Admiral Thrawn cameo.
Ooh.
We could get an actual kept under wraps, but maybe we get a Prince Shizor because he would be in the political party of things, right? Or anything in regards to maybe we get a recast of one of the other Imperials, that we got in the Death Star from A New Hope, right? Like Tag or Mahdi or something like that, right? We might get some type of recast cameo of those, or even, I mean, they could do the deep fakes with them. It doesn't matter. You can obviously get away with that nowadays too. Or again, maybe might get a, Tarkin or something like that. Because again, in the political arena, I as long as it's playing that way, I'm fine with that, right? Or you might get them, again, talking about when Cassian gives his whole speech about how he, the Empire is so fat and full of themselves, and they wouldn't think of anybody coming in and stealing their clothes and spitting in their food and doing all that stuff. I could see that happening at some point, just, as they're sneaking off and doing a spy thing, it happens to be, Tarkin's, Star Destroyer or something like that, right? Or we might get a reference to the Death Star, right? But outside of that, like I said, I totally agree. No Force users needed. No major characters that we, wouldn't already be significant to this storyline. Do we need anything else? So I'm good with completely new casting of everyone, and they've all been wonderful so far.
Yeah, I love that idea that we might have them stealing stuff from Tarkin's command ship. And that when Cassian gave that little speech about sneaking in there, stealing their clothes, and spitting in their food, that he was speaking from experience. He totally has been in there spitting in their food because, ew.
You have to be careful, though. Darth Vader can kill you with a tray. Eddie Izzard said so.
Kill you with this tray.
He can kill you with a fork. He can bend it with his mind.
I did kill catering with this tray.
Or maybe we get Krennic. I forgot to name drop Krennic. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
The one
a Galen Erso cameo, very possible.
Mm-hmm. And Erso too.
The one that I don't want to see is a 14-year-old Leia.
You don't want to see her.
Nah.
Just because it'd take you out of it. Yeah, that's true. That would torpedo that. Now, of course, we know that we will get a Saw Gerrera sighting.
At least.
Yep. And I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a theory on that.
Okay. All right. Well, before we jump into theories and whatnot, and then also jump into the analysis of each of these 3 episodes, we're going to take a quick break so you can find out about all the other great shows here on the Fandom Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Kevin. Okay, well, Adam, since you are our special guest, I'll let you jump in here for a moment to talk about that theory you were going to discuss about what's going to happen with Saw Gerrera in Andor.
We'll do. Now, just before we jump into that, I've got a bit of an announcement to make, and it's from, of course, the Lethal Mullet Network. Somebody is joining me as a co-host on a show which has been pretty regular and is about another space galaxy. And, of course, it is about us humans and spice. Of course, it is the Mullet Guild, and we talk about all spicy things when it comes to Frank Herbert's Dune. Joining me as co-host regularly is, of course, Scotty Bowman, mate.
Yes, I'm so excited to go talk about the desert planet Arrakis and all of the things that are coming down the pipeline for that franchise. We've got part 2 of Dune as a motion picture, but of course also the Sisterhood show that's coming, a regular streaming series set in the Dune universe. And as listeners of this show will recall, I'm also a huge Warhammer 40,000 fan, and of course Space Marines are basically the Imperial Sardaukar from Dune, and etc., etc. A lot of the stuff that is great about the grim, dark future of the 41st millennium is actually borrowed from Frank Herbert's original thoughts in Dune. So I can't wait to get started discussing that with you and trying to figure out the time differential between the States and Australia enough to record on a regular basis. But that's bending time and space to our will is part of the theme, right?
100% it is.
All I know, Scott, is if anybody asks you to look at a tooth, don't.
Remember the tooth.
The tooth. So my theory is this. Now, we've got two characters which have been together in the Clone Wars, which is, of course, Saw Gerrera, trained by both, well, mainly Anakin Skywalker, although there is a little bit of time with Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. But what's interesting is the character, it really mimics a lot of, in story at least, Darth Vader. Both get pretty much mortally wounded and have to live off a life support system. I think what we're going to see in this is a similar path in this series as he guests in the episodes, right up to where we see him, where he's pretty much not active by Rogue One. I mean, he's leading things, but he's at a point where he's really having to, basically Mortan Joe style, suck on air for life, pretty much. So I want to see his degradation. What is his tipping point? What happens to him that happens like Anakin went through as well, to pretty much destroy himself, but become the Saw Gerrera we know in Rogue One.
Yeah, I think that'll be a great way for them to progress that character. For people who don't necessarily know that he was involved in the Clone Wars, even though we've seen his character in multiple Star Wars animation projects, let's be honest, not everyone watches all of the Star Wars animation like they should. No, I'm just kidding. Derek's right. Nowadays, we have enough Star Wars that you can pick and choose what you feel like is good for you and what you don't really care about. But we have people out there who don't know that Saw is almost I don't want to say dark mirror for Vader, because Vader's pretty dark. I guess he's kind of like a side mirror for Vader's journey, because like you said, Saw also begets cybernetic parts and has to go through all of this loss, So maybe we'll see in the Andor series how Saw Gerrera and the partisans came across Bor Gullet, and they're going to use him to know the truth. Bor Gullet will know the truth. Yeah, so that's my Saw Gerrera prediction, is that we're going to see him not only go through his change into the, part man, part machine, but what makes him become so paranoid that he has this weird space octopus to root out potential double-crossing agents. Derek, you got any thoughts about Saw or other guest stars that we think are coming?
Well, again, yeah, we know we're going to get Saw, right? So super excited for Forrest Whitaker to return and reprise the character. Obviously, he's a little bit younger. It's 5 years is 5 years. Not that war wouldn't, make you look a lot worse. And obviously that could be very well some side story that we get, because obviously we don't see everything. Would it be something we get a mention of Jyn Erso? Because at what point does Jyn not fall away from Saw? Do we know when he's done training her? Because she would be just about potentially that age where she's that teenager right? So maybe we get a young Jin Urso. I don't know. So there's that possibility. And then really just any of his side lackeys that we got, that we got to see there, right? Obviously, what was Jeddah, right? Was the city that they were
Yeah,
the
the holy
Empire.
city, the holy
Yeah,
city of
so
Jeddah.
so maybe we see Jeddah in a more prestige, and we actually get a now, not to say we wouldn't, we were talking about non-Force users, but maybe a more pristine Jedi temple,
Mhm.
right? Before they strip everything of it. We don't actually see a Force user, but right, it is like we said, the mention of the Jedi, right? So
Yeah.
maybe we get that.
Yeah, I could see them having a scene at the temple there in Jeddah, and like the guards are still in place, and everything's all regal and still shiny, and then various people come in.
Maybe
Nathan
we get a
from
cameo from Donnie Yen.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and then various corporate interests or imperial interests show up, Nathan, and they're like stripping the temple, and then there are all these people in the background who are like, I can't believe they're doing this. It's so disrespectful to our history as the Church of the Force or the Church of the Jedi or whatever. What are your thoughts about the possibility of that happening, or if you've got a Saw Gerrera theory you want to pile on here?
Well, at first I thought it might be interesting if we did see what happened to Saul Guerrero to cause him to get the implants and whatnot, and specifically if Vader was somehow involved in that. So if Vader does show up, the one person I'd want him to really interact with is Saw, because I think it would be very poetic if the guy who trained Saw how to be a rebel is also the guy who caused
Gave him a
this
punctured
horrible
lung.
thing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But I just double checked, and we do see Saw Gerrera in Rebels, and that Saw Gerrera is set at 2 before the Battle of Yavin, and this show takes place in 5. So that is before we see him in Rebels, and we don't see him with all the gear in Rebels.
Although I have heard that there will be time jumps in the Andor series, not just between season 1 and season 2, but even
Oh, but
between some
within
episodes. Yeah.
Okay, if that happens, then we might see how Saul gets to where he got.
How Saw gets sliced. Hey. Okay.
Anyway, so I still would prefer not to see Darth Vader, but if we're going to see him, fighting Saul is the way that I'd want to see him, not fighting anybody else.
All right, cool. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump into the roundtable discussion about each of these episodes. We've got our traditional 5 questions, but so that we won't have a 3-hour-long episode of the podcast, we're going to kind of compress them a bit to deal with all 3 episodes during the same discussion. So, of course, the first 3 episodes, each airing originally here in the States on September the 21st of 2022, we had Casa, which was episode 1, That Would Be Me, which is episode 2, and Reckoning, which is episode 3. So we'll go ahead and start out with the first question, and that is, what did you like most about these episodes? Derek, I'm going to let you go first here. What did you like most about these episodes? You can answer one thing for all 3, or if you can't narrow it down, you can tell us one thing you liked most from each episode or whatever.
One of the feedbacks we had gotten right before we got to watch it starting yesterday, some of those pre-sneak views, folks were saying that the cutoff and the pacing, felt a little weird. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think they're completely wrong. I have no idea what they're talking about. I felt all 3 episodes, and something that Adam brought up too, was that the pacing's perfectly fine. The pacing is exactly why we've been clamoring for 12, even if something is a one-time series, limited series, 6 episodes, sometimes even 8 episodes just isn't enough for things to breathe, right? In regards to whether it's been Star Wars, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was 6 episodes, which if you would have just tacked on 2 more episodes and just put in some filler stuff, but giving you time to breathe and really take what was going on. Same thing with some of the Marvel stuff, like we talked about, Nathan, when we did our episode on True Believers about Moon Knight, right? How are they going to cram everything in that final episode, right? So I'm okay that things go at a slower pace. I know maybe today's world and kids and blah, 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 and their TikToks, and they only have a 10-second time span for their attention. But at the end of the day, the best stuff is stuff that you get time to digest it. You think about it. It's not something racing from one next thing to the other. And it makes you appreciate what's going on. So I'm going to continue to echo that just the way this has been filmed, what's the pacing of it, the music, the score, everything that they've done with this just feels like not only Star Wars, but it is a great, that original trilogy feel again, but just the homage that they've done to all the other sci-fi. And again, I'm fine that you get these little inclinations and feelings from other franchises. Perfectly fine, right? Because at the end of the day, it's so hard to come up with something so original. But if they do it good in their storytelling, then I'm hooked, right? And I really enjoyed this. This was a little bit better in regards to the flashbacks, first off, right? Which is what we complained about Boba Fett, because it just the way those were timed, it just didn't make as much sense. Like these actually lined up a little bit better, right? They weren't perfect, like, oh, here's a life lesson of something, but there was some things that were tied to it, right? That you could see, oh, okay, why they're showing me this flashback. Oh, it makes sense a little bit, right? Which has just happened that we saw, or what's coming back, especially episode 3 at the end there. And then just the idea of, again, these characters and the way the writing has been. I mean, even the villains, like we said, with the Prima security guards and what we get with them, it's just you get understand these characters. I mean, they really don't do a whole lot because it's really been focused on Andor, right? I mean, even though at this point it's been a movie timeline, right, with three episodes, but it's just you get what they're into it, and you can see them like, oh, okay, this may not be an Empire guy, but this guy and this crew, this is gonna play something that's we're gonna see over the series, over the season at least. So that's what I really like about it. Just overall, the writing so far has been superb. The pacing, the film, it's that grungy, like I said, it just feels like Star Wars.
Yeah, totally. Adam, what did you like best about these first 3 episodes? Again, you can do, I like this one thing, or if you want to break it down, you can.
Well, I like what Derek said. It feels like Star Wars. For the most part, Disney has had a bit of a different feel all over the place. They've kind of hit it on the nail, made a mess here, made a mess there, and altogether, it's not really a cohesive universe as such for the most part. There's a lot of stuff to love, and again, like actually Derek said earlier, there's a bit of Star Wars for everybody. That part I do love about what they've done, but here they've nailed it. They really have. This is giving us what Disney should have done from the first part. Shouldn't have touched anything that come before and started fresh characters like this. This is why I like it. I'm going in. I don't know these characters apart from maybe Casian and a few others that we're going to see in the series, obviously. And it's just great. It's fresh. I'm going in not knowing what's going on, not knowing the worlds that we're on, not knowing what this is all about. And what I love about it is it's a police procedural. We've got all these Proximo, whatever, guards who are all Scottish, by the way, which I kind of like. It's kind of like a 1920s cops and robbers. Righto, let's get down the speeder and get after these guys. Who's this Casian Andor? Righto, let's do it like.
Alex Burns is hilarious. I love his character.
Yeah.
That big, beefy Burlow guy, yes.
Yeah, the mutton chops everything.
Yes.
Which is great. Now, what I do love is the guy that's trying to find Cassian is the only one that really is into it. The rest of them are kind of like, it's just a job. They want to get paid, go home, which is the feel of some of what we see in the original trilogy. The Empire guys, even in the guys in the Rebel Alliance, it's just a job. We're getting our credits and we go home. Hey, same as us in real world, right? But what's great about this is that he's going to follow a similar path together at the same time as Cassian. They're both coming up. They're both very new to what they're doing. Cassian moving into the Rebel Alliance, no doubt by reckoning. But what's great about it is we're seeing them fumble their way through. They're not perfect. They're not great. I do like the opening sequence in the first episode, Casa, where we get to see almost a Bourne Identity takedown of the two guys. And obviously, one great thing that Gilroy has brought in is violence is very real. Now, me as a martial arts instructor, I like that because, yes, violence is very real and we are very fragile, more fragile than people would let on to believe. And it's not all this stuff that we see on the screen, these days where it's 100 hits. It only takes one hit and you can see, have to live with what happened, which is somebody died. And that's not a good thing. That's not a nice thing to live with. So there's all those sorts of ramifications. It's very real world, very grungy, very gritty, but I also like his little school of, people around him. Everyone's lying to each other. There's real truths. There's not whole truths like real life. And this is what makes this more gritty than any other Star Wars.
Yeah, totally, totally. I think for me, the thing that I enjoyed the most about these first 3 episodes was that it very much took a different tact than the rest of Star Wars stories. We had some blasters, we had some starships that looked familiar, we had B2 Emo, a very Star Warsy looking droid. Although Mita was watching it with me and she pointed out that the first part of it felt like Blade Runner, the second part of the first episode, it felt a little like Wall-E because B2 Emo was cruising around in all the scrap, because Ferrix is obviously a place where starships go to get broken down and
It's a salvage
salvaged.
facility.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And so the interesting thing about that is how they melded together all of those disparate elements, but then they put just a little bit of Star Wars flavor into it with, those a few familiar little totems, if you will, seeing the Imperial cog on the microchip on that Star Pulse unit or Star Path unit and so forth. And I really liked that they weren't afraid to go for it. After The Last Jedi, I felt like some of Disney Lucasfilm started being, way too reactionary of let's not take any chances. We gotta stick to as much nostalgic and cutesy as we can. And that's what gave us Grogu and The Mandalorian and those all turned out great, thankfully. But
And
that
Rise
was-
of Skywalker.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Filled with Easter eggs, if you will, or if not Easter eggs, outright homages to famous Star Wars things to make you feel like, oh yeah, I love Star Wars. I'm gonna keep spending money on it and watching these stories. More so than, taking risks with something like the original Rogue One was a risk, and The Last Jedi was a big swing. And I think the first 3 episodes of Andor have been a big swing. I mean, we almost had a girl take her shirt off in a Star Wars show. We've had people, we're going to have people use actual curse words that are, more impactful than damn and hell in a Star Wars production for the first time ever. So, it'll be interesting to see where we land after this first season and how people will have their full reactions to it. But for me, I was happy to see them once again give Gilroy the reins and tell him, do your thing. We're not gonna make you tone it down. This is the gritty Star Wars. Nathan, what did you like best about these first 3 episodes?
I've already talked about how much I enjoyed seeing the security officers, the corporate ones, and how they're so different from what we've seen so far. And it's because stormtroopers are meant to be uniform. It doesn't matter this one, that one, they're all the same. Clone troopers the same way, even more literally. But with these corporate people, they're all different. They're actual characters. And I like seeing how in different levels of the Empire, there's more uniformity or less uniformity. And we see 3 very different approaches, with one person saying, oh yeah, I can tell you exactly what this is. A couple of our officers got drunk and shook down the wrong guy and got themselves killed. And honestly, the thing that the Empire wants most from us is that there are no issues. So let's just sweep this under the rug. And then we have another guy who starts off so adamant. People have been murdered. We have got to take care of this, but clearly has never had any actual practical experience with this, because the moment they go out to actually get Cassian, he just falls apart. And then we've got the boots on the ground guy who is absolutely in charge of this mission. He's like, yes, I think we need 12 people to make sure that we get him, because there's no killing like overkilling.
Mhm.
But in a way, that turns out to be the downfall. Everyone knew they were there. If they had gone in quietly and said, yeah, okay, we're looking for this person, and just searched door to door and found him, it wouldn't have been a big problem. But because they came in so hard, that's what caused Cassian to be able to react and get out of there and cause mayhem. So it was just neat to see, such different perspectives. And I think that middle one might end up turning rebel by the end of the season. Because he clearly, once he got an actual taste for what actually going out and capturing somebody is like, he was not into it anymore.
You mean jackbooted thugs who work for the 1% came in way too much force and killed all the poor people, and that didn't go over well? I can't imagine. This is just,
that is not what I said, Scott. They only killed most of the poor people.
Oh man, I felt so bad for poor Tim. He thought he was doing the right thing, and in some respects, he was. He was, turning in the guy who was wanted for questioning. But it just went way worse than he ever could have thought it would have, and then he got killed for his trouble. Jeez.
Well, and this is the danger of the Empire. They make it seem like turning in your friend is the right thing to do, or at least your friend's friend.
Yeah. Well,
Or in this case, your wife's friend, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, he was obviously partially motivated by jealousy about Biggs,
definitely.
But we could talk about how that wasn't the right motivation, but
how it was great writing.
It was good writing because he got his comeuppance, but then later you're like, that was too severe a punishment for being a little bit jealous of Cassian. His feeling of insecurity about his girlfriend with, let's be honest, the very attractive Diego Luna.
He's a snitch.
He's a snitch.
Snitches deserve stitches.
Stitches, but not
But he
bullets.
can't get stitches. He's dead, man.
You can
He
stitch
is
him up. It
pushing
just
up
doesn't mean he's coming back
daisies.
to life. Hey, they've brought so many people back to life now. Just throw him in a bacta tank. He's okay.
So he's only mostly dead.
That's right.
He's
We'll
just
stitch up
pining
his
for the
cybernetic heart.
fjords.
I mean, how many
Yeah.
people have taken a lightsaber to the gut? Come on.
You make a good point. We might see Tim come back. Oh man, some creepy zombie trooper thing because they
He's
put
a Dark
cybernetics in
Trooper
him.
version 1.
Dark Trooper. Oh.
My gosh, yeah, because Dark Troopers did use.
Because didn't Gideon say these new Dark Troopers in Mando are better because we got rid of the
human element.
Oh my gosh, Derek! If that happens, I'm buying you a T-shirt. Okay, all right. Okay, question number 2. What did you dislike most about these episodes? This time, Adam, we will start with you. What did you not like about the first 3 episodes?
I think they needed more of a synonymous sort of storyline with, of course, his indigenous background and, of course, the flashbacks. I think they were timed pretty well, but I think you could kind of keep that flowing a little bit more. I think it was a bit disjointed. I really enjoyed that. And in some ways, it was kind of like something that Star Trek deals with quite a bit, which is, not bringing a technological civilization into one that's still burgeoning and still learning science and stuff like that too. What's great about it is, in this one, they did it in a different way. It was a crashed starship, in this case, a Republic one. And it's the whole thing of what is that, and you think about it from an indigenous perspective, them being on the planet first. Caster and his obviously his people see this as a god ship. This is something that's come from the heavens. What is this? Because obviously they don't have that technology just yet. So that was an interesting storyline. I wanted to see maybe them push that a little bit further, but I realized they've only got 12 episodes, so they need to really get his Rebel Alliance sort of idea pushing forward. But we obviously get to see his guardian in this, it basically gives him the name Andor at the end, obviously. Come in and, she's someone that is obviously taking a liking to him and obviously give him a bit of a life elsewhere. I think that could have been strung out a little bit more. There could have been good drama in the idea of the two different cultures coming together that way.
Yeah. I got a real Lord of the Flies vibe from the kids there in the flashbacks on Grisari. All right, Nathan, what did you dislike about these 3 episodes?
They ended
No, hey.
Yeah,
Why can't they
but
pull a Netflix?
too short. Needed the whole
Binge,
season
binge,
at
binge,
once.
binge.
Wanted to binge them. The name Tim. It's not a Star Wars name. They just
Now,
added an extra M on
yeah,
the
what I'm
end.
saying, it's got another consonant that doesn't count.
No, that
You know,
doesn't
where, you know
count.
where that's from? Monty Python.
Well, there are
His
some who
name
call
is
him Tim.
Tim.
Now you know the story behind that. He was supposed to have a really long and complex name, and just forgot it on the
Yeah,
spot. He's like,
John Cleese was like, I'm not saying that.
Tim.
Tim.
Now there's not a lot to dislike, in my opinion. At least not in the first 3 episodes. Now, I will say there are some things that I'm waiting to see a payoff on. I want to see where the flashback story goes. I don't think it's complete. So if we don't get some sort of payoff there, then that could kind of retroactively become my least favorite thing about the first 3 episodes. But as long as we actually get the payoffs that we're setting up, there's not much to dislike, in my opinion.
Well, good. Derek, what did you dislike about these first 3 episodes?
Cassian's a bum.
He is a bum.
He doesn't
He's a
have a
total
job.
bum.
He doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
I mean, he just goes off and he just, roams through the streets and tells people, oh, you saw me at this time during the day, and then he goes off with, as Nathan put, hookers in the middle of the night, right? So, I mean, at this point, he's just a bum. And
I did also refer to them as ladies of the night.
Ladies of the night. And he still lives with his mom. What kind of loser
He still lives
is
with his mom. Yes, he is a loser with no job who still lives with his mom. Boy, talk about a departure from the usual Star
Luke
Wars
Skywalker.
protagonist. Well, I mean, at least Luke had a job, and that was his aunt and his uncle, not his mom.
I mean, at least he was working on a farm, right? I mean, they put him to work, right? So, not saying that he didn't go off to Tashi Station and blow up some converters or shoot womp rats and all that stuff out of the pigeonholes.
Wasting time with Cammy and Fixer.
But literally, I mean, and how does Andor must have like 2 hours of sleep every night because he's like partying out till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then he's getting up at 6 a.m. because there's the guy there, which I thought was Jon Favreau at first, but it's obviously not him. As like the lone, like his only job is to do the clock, the ringing at the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. And he's really passionate about that job. So that was great, But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to know. That was my one thing. I was like, what did Andor do before this?
And answer, he's a bum.
He is. I mean, so I feel like I'm like, okay, is he just the local pigeon guy of some sort that just goes and I don't know. I don't know what Andor does because at the end of I thought at first, like when he met with his one buddy that came out of the salvage yard, he was going to be like, why didn't you show up to work today? And he's like, oh man, I need you to cover for me. Right. Something like that. But he like never does anything. Right. So it's like, okay, what does Andor have to rebel about? He's got the perfect life. You know what I mean? Come on.
Like, what are you
What is he so angry? Yeah, what is he rebelling about?
What are you rebelling against? What do you got? Because he's the bum,
so
right?
Punk. He's so punk.
He's so punk.
He's punk.
Like, he's
anti-man.
He is anti-establishment, whatever the establishment may be. Like, I hate the Republic. Well, why don't you like the Empire? Because I hate the Empire. Anyway.
And he didn't even have any blue milk when he goes to the saloon.
I know.
No. So and he's just
we don't
sleeping
serve
with the
that
women.
kind of drink
I mean,
here.
for all we know, Andor might have like 8 illegitimate children out there. For all
it
we
sounds
know
like he could with that comment about another jealous husband or angry boyfriend.
I mean,
And then, just to drive the point home, he does in fact run afoul of a jealous boyfriend in Tim, and that's how he gets. That's how he gets made. That's how he gets found out.
I mean, and think about this. At the end of the day, the rebellion. The whole entire rebellion is gonna basically be based off of a jealous boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
But even the nice young woman at the start, given her
the
3
lady
options,
of the establishment
was like, okay, we got 2 security guys over there and Diego Luna. Who am I going to go talk to?
Yeah.
Oh, they were here first. Yeah, it does not matter.
She's like the ugly girl. Go for them.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't want her. Anyway. Okay, so for my answer to question 2, what you disliked about these 3 episodes, I was a little bit taken out of it by, geez, this is like gritty Star Wars, and I'm glad we didn't have any actual nudity, because man, for a few seconds there, when Bix and Tim were together, I thought that was about to happen. I was going to be like, whoa, I don't need Game of Thrones to influence all of the streaming series this much. So I'm glad that didn't happen, but
that tank top was tight, though.
It was. She was doing her best Sigourney Weaver from Aliens, let's be honest. And so clearly I don't dislike that type of, entertainment for guys, if you will, in action movies, but like Star Wars is its own separate thing. And I feel like it never really has to ape other productions' style. The original trilogy was very camp, especially episode 4, which is why partly is one of my favorite ones. Very Flash Gordon-y, and so Flash isn't going to do the kind of stuff that Cassian did, partly because he's not a bum like
And
Cassian.
neither did Leia. Flash.
Baba. Anyway, so I made my peace with it, and the writing has brought me around to where it's not bothering me as much. But it definitely was a case of I could feel the grittiness in the palms of my hand in my remote control while watching this show, and I don't know that I need Star Wars to do that. I'm going to get over it, and it's like Derek said at the beginning. We have enough Star Wars now to where everybody can sort of pick and choose the style or the atmosphere that they want. And that's great. I think it's wonderful as Star Wars fans that we have that much to go on. But I could do without quite some of the blastering people in the head, kind of stuff. But, at least they did it well and the production value is high. It wasn't Grindhouse. Okay, so number 3, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy? Nathan, what connections did you see to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy in these 3 episodes?
Well, most of the connections I saw were in the flashbacks, but we're going to talk about those in a few minutes. So I want to pull a really weird connection, and that is to the Star Wars LCG that Fantasy Flight Games used to make, and they no longer make it. But somehow, in the base expansion for that game, there was a objective called corporate exploitation. It's a dark side objective, and the way this game works, the way you build your deck is you choose 10 objectives and you take all 5 of the cards that go with that objective. So you end up with a 50 card deck. Well, all 5 of the cards in that objective set are Espo Trooper. Basically, the jackbooted thugs that we saw from the corporation. I don't know how Fantasy Flight Games knew that was going to be a plot line in this
9 years
show.
later.
Yeah, several years after they made
Somehow,
that.
yeah.
Somehow they knew, or at least could make an educated guess that the Empire would, use corporations to exploit people. Again, who knew? But I thought that was an interesting parallel. It's the first thing that I thought when I saw all of the troopers in the show.
Cool. I love that callback. While I was not as huge a fan of Star Wars LCG as I was of Star Wars Destiny, it was still a good game, and I played it a good bit and owned. Gosh, I think I owned all the booster sets and expansion packs up until like the 3rd deluxe set when we decided to stop playing the game.
It was a great game when it was balanced, which unfortunately was less often than it was not balanced.
Yeah, as a lot of Fantasy Flight Games products went, they had to errata cards quite frequently in the Star Wars LCG, and sometimes it took too long for them to make that change. So anyway, Adam, what connections did you see to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
All right. Well, apart from Cassian himself, I think the one that got me was when we were in the shipyards, Now, blink or you miss it, and I haven't watched it since, so I'm going to freeze frame it. But I do believe I saw a snow speeder on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and a sweeping shot loaded to the hilt with artillery pieces on the top. And you can tell by the front of the canopy that it was like the land speeder version of it or whatever it was, which I really, was, again, another tie to the bigger universe. But then also looking at Luthen's ship, which is that massive Carillion, whatever you call it, ship that he's got with, of course, the wings coming on the sides.
Right.
That is something I've seen around somewhere. I don't know where it was. It's either in the West End games or it's one of the ones that they've done in the X-Wing game, perhaps. I'm not sure. But because they've done a number of Carillion ships. But that straight away ties into the bigger universe.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved also I noticed that the cockpit there of Luthen's ship had a TIE Fighter-esque feel with that, or even Millennium Falcon feel with that.
I was going to say that was going to be my connection was when Andor's walking through it, it looks like the Millennium Falcon, right? It's got that feel with the way they have the just the flooring and then the archways, the way that lighting is, and everything within it. And there's like these sub rooms, right? So, and the way his ship looks like is actually from Rogue One's ship. What was the ship that they used in Scarif? What was that?
The Rebellion?
Yeah, what ship?
The U-Wing.
The U-Wing. Yeah, it had the U-Wing type deal feel to it, right? Where it was coming up and like it had different forms. So
Okay, well, yeah, Derek, go ahead. What was your connection? I guess other than the ship there.
Well, that one and then the one that the Prima guys came in looked like the clone trooper drop shuttles.
The LAAT, right?
Yeah, so it looked like that, right? So so that was where mine was going with that initially. And then I did feel though still like even just the buildings themselves, the structures felt Star Warsy, right? Like you had this, whether it was in the Tatooine, cities of Mos Eisley or Mos Espa, or what we get with what's the first city in not drawing a blank now that just asked me in Mando. Where's the first main city?
On Navarro?
Navarro, yeah. So like Navarro, the way the structures are, where they got like these flat buildings and then you got kind of like the little spheres that come up in certain ones, and then some of them are just flat, and then you got, the pipes coming up, and then just and they're built in the middle of nowhere, right? It just built in the middle of nowhere. There's either, flat fields or there's deserts or there's mountains or whatever, right? There's like obviously we, things can fly, so you don't need roads, right? But we did get some of that in Obi-Wan, right? I mean, you still had parts where they had roads to go through, but it just felt open, right? It wasn't like you literally had just like you go to some of our major cities, which obviously is what makes Coruscant and stuff like that, where it's just literally one giant city, right? But it's just all these planets out in the middle of nowhere. It's just like these little pockets, right? And somebody can, park their ship, a couple of miles away and walk the rest of the way into town, right? So, just those little things right there, just makes it feel like a Star Wars universe to me. Because even if like when we play our games, right? I mean, that feels like any of the Star Wars worlds we played in, like in the Old Republic or Star Wars Galaxy. It's just these towns, they're just open in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Good point. And for me, my major connection, this is very esoteric, but it's immediately what I thought of. In episode 1 in Casa, when the cops are harassing Casian after he leaves the bar, and they tell him that if he parked on the causeway, he's going to have to pay a fine, or maybe he parked out the other way and he swam in. All I could think of was Canto Bight in The Last Jedi. Yeah, those two. They've parked their speeder on the beach. You ought to give them a ticket.
You can't park there.
That's exactly what I thought of, was the guy that Joseph Gordon-Levitt, of all people, did the voice for in The Last Jedi when he was complaining about them parking on the beach. And these two cops were essentially carrying on the grand tradition of using a parking violation as a pretense to, really wring that guy out to dry, as it were. But I love the way Cassian dealt with it. Other pocket, bam! And then, like Adam said, just kills the guy. Good times. Okay, so question number 4 of our 5 questions is a bit more specific. Derek, I think you're the one that came
That
up
was
with this.
Nathan's.
Oh, sorry, Nathan. Nathan, you're the one that came up with question 4. So take it away, Nathan.
All right. So, what's up with the freighter in the flashbacks? That's the question. And I have several answers that can't all be right.
Okay, so give us your first one here.
All right. So, the first thing that I thought when I saw the people who had been aboard the freighter who were dead ish, maybe, I don't know, as we discussed earlier, nearly dead people can come back in this universe. Looking at their outfits, the first thing that I thought was actually Dr. Pershing from The Mandalorian, which his outfit is based on the cloner's outfit from Camino. So I thought maybe these people were working on a strand cast. Kind of well, at this point, Grogu's already around, so it wouldn't be Grogu, but something akin to that. And perhaps something went wrong and caused an explosion, and that's why they crashed. But I took a closer look at their uniforms, and they do have an emblem on them. So the ship is supposed to be a Republic ship, but the emblem on the uniforms isn't a Republic emblem. And it's not an Imperial emblem either. It's a CIS emblem.
Whoa.
Confederacy of Independent Systems emblem.
Right.
So, what are they doing on a Republic ship? But maybe my first thought is still somewhat correct because Palpatine was playing both sides. Maybe he had some of the darker stuff working on the CIS side.
Interesting. Adam, what are your thoughts about that freighter? You had referred to it as a Republic freighter earlier, and Nathan agrees that it's a Republic-style starship. But yeah, he's right. Those guys are not wearing Republic uniforms. What is up?
The thing is, too, it's not Republic because, I mean, they would have clones on that ship as well if it was. And we're definitely not seeing that in the uniforms, the layouts and stuff like that. Plus, as they get into the middle of the ship and he's starting to bash around, go and smash things, that's straight up Imperial looking, computers and stuff like that, too. So not only Nathan's right, like it's definitely a ship that's probably labeled not Republic, it being Confederacy, right? So there's that, but also it's not Confederacy inside. They're definitely something else, but it is all inside Imperial or Republic at that time. So what were they doing there? What did they get shot down by? Is probably the bigger question.
Yeah, I am of the opinion. Great answer, Adam. I am of the opinion that they didn't get shot down. That there was some sort of accident on board, like a malfunction. However, Nathan's point about these guys are wearing CIS patches now kind of makes me think that it was a Republic ship that's getting raided by these dudes, and they have from the inside. They were trying to take it over because there's something on board they want for the Separatists, and something went wrong. There was a firefight, whatever happened. And that's why they're all wearing their rebreathers, is because at some point they, jettisoned the atmosphere to get the jump on the guys who were the crew of this ship. Maybe they dumped all the clones into space as part of their first step in ambushing the ship. There we go, space pirates. And so maybe that's what's happened, and that's why they're all wearing rebreathers, but they can't fix it in time, and it crashes onto Grisari. And then the Empire covers this all up, as Derek had talked about earlier, by faking a mining accident. And that's why Cassian and everybody refers to Grisari in Canary, not Grisari, in a past tense. So that's my official theory right now. Those were separatist pirates or privateers boarding a Republic ship for some unknown booty. And perhaps the booty was taken by Marva and her friend who came and scavenged it. And so it will be our MacGuffin all these years later.
It's Grogu.
Oh, it might be Grogu. Derek, what are your thoughts about question 4 here? What is the deal with this ship?
Well, I mean, it could be MacGuffin of Grogu, or it could be MacGuffin of something for the Death Star, right? So they would
Ooh,
need
yeah.
some type of, way of, doing the kyber crystals into some type of, laser pistol, right? So there could be that. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, right? Where I think we talked about in the past tense of Canary that it was, no longer there. So I think, yeah, that was, like I said, I think what attacked the ship was the Empire, but it could have been pirates, to your point with them. I mean, it's hard to say, right? So I mean, I'm definitely with Nathan. They gotta solve it at some point, right? Because otherwise it'll be this whole elaborate, unless if there's something that they're just planting a seed now and it won't be answered for another 10 more years until we get another series of some sort, right? Maybe the ISP agents or something like that. The opposite.
Well, Lord knows we've waited years and years to find out what happened with Ezra, and we're now on the cusp of actually finding that out. So,
Yeah,
that could happen.
The
I'm just
big
trying
thing
to,
that I hope is that it is not that the costume department grabbed the wrong patch.
Oh, that would suck so bad. We're gonna digitally edit every shot of these patches.
hey,
in
there's
episode
Gene
1.
Pants guy that they did. So
That's
why
it.
not?
Yep.
That's true. So
Go Jeans guy.
clearly, next week I'm going to have to rewatch the episodes to see whether they changed it or not. Oh,
Well, I'll be honest. I mean,
shucks! I'll have to rewatch it.
you talked about it, Nathan, right? This is one of those things where I want to rewatch the episodes, but at the same time, I don't, because I really want to wait till all 12 episodes are out and then rewatch them all together, because I feel like that is just going to do so much better, because it's great that we're getting these weekly, but man, it's like, give me more. Okay. Every week drop 3 episodes. We're done in 4 weeks. Okay.
I'm very glad that they did drop all 3 of these episodes at once, because if we had just gotten that first one, I don't know what we'd be talking about. There just wouldn't have been quite enough
Blade
there.
Runner.
We would have been talking about Blade Runner.
It's true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is
Okay.
he a
Well,
replicant?
is Cassian a clone? Yeah. So, okay. So question number 5, and Derek, this was your question, so I'll let you take it away there.
Yep. So what did you guys think? Because I mean, we just talked about it, right? So we got all 3 episodes dropped at once, but obviously episode 3 really felt like a good cliffhanger, right? Like we were saying, I didn't think episode 1 or 2 where it ended was bad, but episode 3 really, I mean, you get this whole, the last 15 minutes of what we get, this whole probably maybe 20 minutes, the way it really goes, really at this point, the half the episode. You get finally, Casian Andor and Luthen together, right? And you get that conversation, which we kind of got the sneak peek, right, when we talked about last episode, where we got that, a couple weeks ago from the D23 release. So we get this, right? We finally get that speech, and there was some cutouts, which now that we got that, things that are happening at the same time, right? And we get this whole reckoning thing, right? I mean, Adam's already mentioned it a couple times, right? In joking there. So we get this whole conversation from Marv and the reckoning, and you can feel that the air is tense in the town here, right? And you got these Imperials, but they're not really Imperials, right? But stormtroopers at least, right? But you get these Empire guys that are in this town, and you're getting this town, and there's just all this, and the music is building up. We finally get this action sequence, to your point, Scott, that didn't feel like we got a whole lot of action in the first couple of episodes, right? So we get this action sequence, and it seems like, I mean, because this would have made just a great movie, right? Just these 3 episodes. Probably would have needed something else to end a little bit. Otherwise your characters would have fallen flat, but but other than that, I mean, you get them, what everything's happening, they Luthen and Cassian escape, you get them with the distraction, right? And you think the Prima guys are all good, then the thing blows up and a couple guys are dead or injured, right? Everything's hell's breaking loose, and all of a sudden you see on the one young guy, Prima guy's face, like, oh shit, what have I gotten into, or what have I done, right? Almost at the same time. But almost at the same time, you get in his thing, like, I am so pissed off that I am going to do everything I can now in my power that I'm able to do to get this guy because he's made a mockery of us, right? So and then again, you just get them and they're flying off, and then you're getting the flashbacks, right, where you're seeing everything. So just overall, that's the question, right? So what did you guys think to the ending of episode 3?
Yeah. I'll go first this time around. I love the ending. I thought it was a great payoff in that firefight in that warehouse section of the old warehouse with the engine block looking things hanging in the ceiling. Oh my gosh, that screamed video game level to me. Or at the very least, Star Wars role playing game encounter, because you had good guys, bad guys, and then environmental hazards with the things falling out of the ceiling, right? And then you had the thing you were trying to get, the star navigator thing, which I think is such a cool thing for them to be fighting over. It helps you find all those Imperial ships around you, and I love the idea that there's that little Imperial medallion thing in the Star Pulse. Or Star Path. I got to remember which one that is. Anyway, and it's a flash forward, not a call back, but a call forward to Zuri having a First Order Captain's Medallion in the Rise of Skywalker that Poe Dameron is going to use to get on board the flagship there, so that he can help out Rey and Finn and rescue Chewbacca. It's such a cool thing as a little nod there. But yeah, episode 3, the ending was great. Derek, you're right. It could almost be its own film. If you put all 3 of these together, it's basically like 90, maybe 100 minutes total. Maybe 120 minutes. Anyway, and I would watch it in the theater. They may release it on screens. I think somewhere in Canada they had a showing of the first episode or the first 3 episodes.
They did it in a lot of the premieres here in the United States as
Yeah.
sneak peeks this past week. So,
and one thing I forgot to mention that I also love about episode 3, the guy who's ringing the chime at the beginning of each day, I'm starting to think that I used to think it was like the old textile mill or lumber or steel mill, whistle to come to work back in the Industrial Revolution. The whistle to come start your shift. But now I'm thinking it's some sort of quasi-religious thing, almost like a call to prayer for Muslims. Because, guys, am I remembering this wrong? Or wasn't there a dude who did something similar at that planet Ahsoka was on in The Mandalorian? Wasn't there a guy who was in a bell tower of sorts, and he was going to use it to warn everybody of her coming, but it obviously was used for other things too?
Yeah, he was directly above the gate in the episode The Jedi. But yeah, we never really got a good explanation of why that particular instrument was there in either of these. I assumed it was like the textile mill or any sort of company town, basically, where they call
Fred
everybody.
Flintstone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Call
I
everybody,
just
wake them up, and get them to work.
Yeah, I just think the guy really enjoyed his job that much.
But here's one other thing about it, making me think that there's something more to this. There was a trailer for an as yet unmade Star Wars game from I think Eclipse Studios or something like that was shown last year.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And there's a dude in there doing a similar thing with a gong, and then some dudes doing a similar thing with drums.
Well, that was just music, right? And I think it was a ritual that they were doing, right?
That's what I'm saying. Is that is the gong in Andor and the gong in Ahsoka somehow rooted all the way back in that ritual? Because remember, that game's supposed to be from way back in the day.
It could be. I mean, you got to think, right? In a society like that, I don't know what type of other religions there are besides Jediism, right? I mean, was there other types of religions?
Yeah.
We know there's a hell, at least because Solo's mentioned it numerous times to people.
Yes.
And there's space angels, right? So we know there's something.
But we do end up seeing those space angels. That they are corporeal beings.
Yeah.
In the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I mean, we get that, right? So. But there are the wolves and stuff, right, that we've gotten to developed. So I'm not saying there aren't. But to me, it was just that's the guy that starts his day off and he's kind of just like, psyching himself up for the day, right? Like, here's what I'm doing. or to your point, I mean, maybe it's him honoring the rise and the sunset or whatever, right, of the day, right? It could be something, but at the end of the day, I thought it was just him. It was just supposed to be a silly moment, like him, getting ready for, oh, I got to start the day.
Yeah, and maybe you're right, but he's just one more reason why I loved episode 3. Thought it was a great ending to the trilogy of opener there, and them Cassian and Luthen escaping, I think, was the perfect way to have our cliffhanger for part 4.
So,
all right, cool. Nathan, what is your answer to question number 5?
Well, I think Derek brings up a very good point about how these 3 episodes feel almost like a movie. They're cohesive enough to where you could have shown them all 3 at once and said, this is the start of Andor. I don't think they want to do that, in part because that's kind of how they started the Clone Wars, and the Clone Wars movie was not great. Even as a Clone Wars fan, the movie was not great.
But that one was made for kids. Let's be honest. That was a kid's
that's
movie.
True.
And this is
Yeah,
definitely made
saving
for adults.
Jabba's kid, Stinky. Animation is not necessarily for kids, but that was. Regardless, yeah, I do think that these 3 episodes feel like a movie. All you'd really have to do to make it into a movie is add a little cap on the end where Cassian and Luthen are talking about what they're going to do next to set up the sequel movie. So I did like how that ended for a television show, knowing that we're going to see the next installment next week. We don't necessarily need that cap, but we would have if it was a movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, Adam, bring us home here. What did you think about the ending to episode 3?
Great thing was to just finally have Stellan have a chance to have a bit more to do, have the gunfight. And it's always great to hear him say Casian Andor, because he's got that great delivery, whether it's in this one or in. Look, I go right back. I've followed him since Hunt for Red October. He's a guy who's not only in American films and international films, in films from his own country as well, with Arn the Knight Templar. Now, if you guys haven't seen this, you have to. It's ARN, the Knight Templar. It is one of the best. It's up there with Kingdom of Heaven. A little bit smaller budget because it was made for TV, but it's fantastic. Anyway, getting back to it. So he's always been great. Ronan, another great one where he's basically the villain, particularly when he gets a great scene with De Niro. Same sort of deliveries in this. And De Niro sets an ambush up for him over a little coffee table. And he goes, "Oh, you caught it. Great reflexes." "Yeah, they die hard." He's got that great, beautiful delivery in this as well. Now, we know he's going to be some type of, whatever it is, subterfuge character in this. But we're now putting the bits together that through, of course, Cassian's contacts, that this is the guy that's obviously been after the stuff. But obviously, he's after more from Cassian himself. How is Cassian getting these jobs done? How is he breaking into places? And as he says, he's literally, because the Empire is so dim-witted that he can just walk into a place. They're unassuming of people that are below them. And this is what is his success. The greatest thing of this was, of course, yes, the shootout was great in this. It felt at times a little bit like the set of Alien 3 because you've got those massive moving chains and, of course, the big, the weighted things like that. It added, again, a level of difficulty, which I love that you guys thought it was like a role-playing game too. This feels like, the whole series actually feels like West End games when I used to play in high school. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I certainly didn't do a lot of schooling because the minute we got a chance to go to recess, it was RPG time. We downed our sausage rolls and meat pies, and out came the D20s, and we played D&D, and we played Robotech and all that sort of stuff. So West End, of course, was a big part of that. And we were stuck in situations like these for about 4 or 5 lunchtimes where we're just doing combat around massive set pieces like this. This is what is Star Wars. This is why I love that ending to it. And we had a slow burn up to that, which is what Star Wars is about. It's not about these things that we saw at the start of Last Jedi, big explosions on Star Destroyers and bombers and stuff like that. Same with all the stuff in the sequel trilogy. They're starting to get it right now in the TV series. Maybe Star Wars is meant for TV, being episodic.
Yeah, I've enjoyed all the Star Wars series so far. Okay, well, it's time for Derek's. Oh, Derek's got something to add.
So I didn't want to mention it at first because I didn't want to do it in case someone else had mentioned it. So what I loved the most about episode 3 and in the way it ended is because I've only seen one other movie that to at least that sticks with me to this day because the score is so wonderful and this really hit me hard. So I don't know. I'm sure Adam knows it, and because he's probably done a cover of it, Smoking Aces. So, remember the ending, the way it hits you at the end with Ryan Reynolds, right? This is exactly it. This is nothing being said. It's just pure music. You're seeing the emotions and everything going on, and you're just seeing people's faces and everything going on, and it just hits me so hard. And that's what I loved about this. So what we talked about, Nathan even echoed it, right? It's like a movie, right? And if you just ended it right then and there, great, I'm done, right? I mean, obviously I want to see what happens now. But if that was the way the movie would have ended, I'd have been like, okay, this is how the rebellion starts, essentially.
Yeah, that would have been cool. I would have accepted that. Okay, Derek, time for your favorite part of the show. What Star Wars t-shirt are we wearing this week? Nathan, what Star Wars t-shirt are you wearing this week?
All right. Well, normally we record on Sundays, and I've already done laundry, and I have my pick of Star Wars t-shirts. Well, it ain't Sunday. So what you're getting is the clean one. And that is Beware of Wookiee. It's not my favorite t-shirt, even though I do love Wookiees, because there's so much stuff on the front. It doesn't feel as comfortable as some of the others.
Right.
So, yeah, it tends to be the last one clean, and that's what we got today.
I feel like that's the last one. That was the same one you had last time, too, wasn't it? Just because.
So maybe I hadn't done laundry yet that day. Sometimes it's after the podcast.
There you go.
Good times. All right, Derek, what Star Wars t-shirt are you rocking this week?
All right, so you guys know me. I try to wear something that's a bit of a thematic, right, in regards to what episode we just watched or if it was the series or something, right? And I didn't have anything that was Casian Andor Rogue One related. So hopefully, one of the things I love about T-Turtle is that when they come out with shirts based off the series stuff that they are the movies. So now that we got something with Cassian Andor, maybe we'll get some more Rogue One shirts or something like that from them, and then I could buy those. But so I didn't have anything, so I was like, okay, what do I have that could be considered something? And I was like, well, this is kind of a espionage, type deal, thriller. So this was the only shirt that I could figure out that was close to it.
Oh, it's Admiral Akbar Chibi going, it's a trap.
Yes.
Akbar should be active during this time period, so it
Correct.
is
That
theoretically
too.
possible that we could see him.
So, but I just figured it's a trap, right? It's a trap, Cassian.
Know why we would, but we could.
All right, Adam, did you put on some Star Wars gear today, or?
I didn't do the shirt because the shirt's in the wash. I do my washing. The missus doesn't. She's got enough to wash. You should see the amount of clothes. It's crazy. But I did have my little hat. So
a Boba Fett helmet with dent and peeled off paint. Good times. I dig it. Well, I followed Derek's lead and try to do a thematically appropriate shirt, but I have a Rogue One shirt. So I've got the Rogue One poster that says, "May the Force be with us," and has the ships in the background and the Phoenix logo for the rebellion, and Jyn Erso and Cassian and Baze and all those guys, Chirrut and all those guys down at the bottom as they're about to meet their climactic destiny on the planet of Scarif. So yeah,
that we know of.
That we know of.
They could have escaped.
They could have. I mean, it seems unlikely, but hey, Darth Maul came back. Anything's possible, right?
Just throw the planet in a Bacta tank, and whoever was will come back.
It already had that energy field thing around it, right? Just push the other button, and it'll heal the planet. Right? Well, if you guys out there listening want to get your own cool What a Piece of Junk t-shirt, or a t-shirt or mouse pad or iPad case or phone case for any of the other great shows here on the Fandom Podcast Network, please check out our T Public store. Just head on over to tpublic.com and search up Fandom Podcast Network to see all the merch there for your favorite shows. Derek, let people know where they can find the show online, please, sir.
So, like we mentioned, the big place you want to go to is finding it on the master feed. And that's going to be at the Fandom Podcast Network, which is through fpnet.podbean.com on the Podbean app. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. The big place you can find us also on the most, meta, if you want to call it, Facebook, is at the group What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast, which is what I run. Come join out, give us any feedback you want, leave comments. We like to post funny memes as well about Star Wars related stuff. And then any of the other great Fandom Podcast Network items get posted on there as well. So, stuff that we talked about at the break there from Kevin's ad, you can obviously, listen to the most recent podcast from there. Then you can also reach us at the What a Piece of Junk pod at gmail.com, which is what Scott checks with in the email. Also the Twitter handle at What Wars. And then our Instagram is the Fandom Podcast Network. And then Nathan, tell the listeners about those Apple reviews.
Well, we came for the Apple 5-star reviews, and we'll leave with just that if that's all we can get. But what we really came for was you and your feedback, because we want to know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what you'd like to hear. So please let us know how we're doing. Be honest. It also helps other people find our podcast when you leave reviews. So please give us great reviews or bad ones if you think we deserve them, but then I don't really know why you're listening. So great reviews.
Nathan, that transition was so great with the callback to Luthen and his line to Cassian. I mean, I'm verklempt about it, but I'm not going to cry because I don't want to be too emo. Wow. I'm getting disapproval from the literal other side of the planet for that joke. It was so bad that people hate it.
That was a dad joke.
Hemispheres.
That was right up there with the one I just told the other day. I'm just trying to remember it now, but it was that bad I've forgotten it too.
Well, Adam, you want to give us before we go, give us a brief rundown of what's happening over on the Lethal Mullet Network. And
actually, I got the joke for you. I figured it out. What do you get when you cross an elephant and a rhino?
I don't know.
Elefino.
That physically hurt. I don't know if I want to give you a chance to do a promo now or not.
All right, folks, let's give you the rundown. Here we go. All right, I am the Lethal Mullet, and of course, it is looking at all forms of action movies from the 80s, 90s, and beyond, sometimes even before that, because you can get it from the 60s even. Yes, there is a few there. And, of course, here at Quinlan's Cantina, we have the Lethal Mullet Network with, of course, the flagship show, Lethal Mullet Podcast, covering that. We've also got Making Treks, a Star Trek fan podcast with Mark Newbold, a fellow Fantha tracker, where I also have a show over there called the Fantha from Down Under. Star Wars news in a single file. We also have the Mullet Guild, now with Scotty Bowman joining us. And, of course, we're going to be covering all things Dune on that podcast. And, of course, with Darth Elvis. That's right, Darth Elvis all the way from Edinburgh and Aberdeen in Scotland, lad. That's right. He is all over when it comes to music on the Mullet and Kilt podcast. There's more there, folks. But, of course, join us there at the Lethal Mullet on all socials. And, of course, lethalmulletnetwork.podbean.com.
Wow, that was really impressive. It's almost like you've done this before. All right, great. Well, we want to thank Adam for joining us, and we're so glad that we were recording while he was on vacation so that he could record from the future. And we will be back next week to talk some more Casian Andor. But we want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you for giving us any of that feedback. We do all this to make the Star Wars experience more enjoyable for all of you. So until next time, I want to thank you all and remind you to always respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.
Oh.